All right, it's on.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. First of all, welcome to our 10th session or meetup here at the Power Platform Portugal. Today, with two special guests that you probably know from YouTube and from blogs, Daniel, Christian, and Reza Dorrani. I'm just gonna do a quick introduction and then we'll leave the stage for them because they are the full guests here. Okay, so today it marks 1 year anniversary for the Portuguese community Power Platform. So we are now on the 10th meetup. Uh, Kudos everyone. Thanks to you. Thanks to all the people that made this possible. And hopefully we'll increase this community a lot more in the future and have more people engaged with this community. Just so you understand a little bit about the numbers, we have a WhatsApp uh, uh, um, site that you can follow. Okay, we already have 121 participants. Please join if you don't know us. We are also in LinkedIn where we have 400 followers. And now on our meetup site, we already have 600 members. Okay, this is great. Okay, in 1 year doing all this work and people working on the Power Platform on the Portuguese side. Thank you, everyone. This is your job. Keep coming, and we will try to give you the best sessions that we can possibly do. As you know, we are a team of 7 people, many from Microsoft, from Expand IT, Shift Consulting, Artemis, DevScope, and you already know us. If you want to do a session for us, don't hesitate. Send us an email and let us know how you can also engage the community surrounding you. Without further ado, I just leave to Daniel and Reza the next session. In the name of the Portuguese community, thank you, Daniel and Reza, for joining us and for accepting the invitation. The stage is yours. So just one little thing. In the end, we will leave some questions, okay, for you to make to Reza and Daniel. Don't hesitate. Just enjoy the session and do the questions that you want, okay? Thank you very much.
All right. Let me just test, take over the screen sharing. Can you validate? Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, okay. Gosh, thanks so much for that introduction, man. It's always a pleasure to speak, outside our U.S. country, and just enjoy sharing knowledge. Basically, that's what Reza and I do. Is we create content on a weekly basis just to share our knowledge, because that's the best way to make an impact. But today we're going to talk about Power Platform and SharePoint. If you haven't already guessed, SharePoint is a near and dear service to Reza and my heart, because we come from SharePoint backgrounds. Heck, we met at SharePoint user group, so we've been doing SharePoint for a long time, back in the day when you still installed and configured it. So this topic is still a very near and dear content to our heart, and we keep very close eye on SharePoint, because to this day, if you already don't know, SharePoint is still the highest connector that is used with Power Platform in general. So people have a lot of appetite for SharePoint. So let's dive in, and we'll see as much as we can learn about that. You guys already know about the R&D show. We saw comments coming in, so I'll completely skip this. But one thing I'll let you know is that our next session is going to be completely on AI based. So it's going to be a fun one. So just kind of stay tuned on that. So one thing Reza and I thought, I just said that him and I have grown up from SharePoints. We like to start our session with this slide. It's actually a slide that was made by Microsoft, and it talks about the history of SharePoint. And it's always a fun thing for some people this brings bad memories also, which is true. Migrations have always been tough at some point, but it's always a good thing just to see the history of SharePoint. Back in the day when SharePoint would work just fine with the SQL Express, the smallest terms of speak SQL and Express, and we had to build it when it wasn't even called SharePoint Server, it was just called SharePoint Portal. Like when you fast forward and now you're talking about AI and SharePoint syntax and directly in it. And if you don't know all the full history, bits and pieces of SharePoint are taking a huge impact on M365. Like the M365, the search was built on top of SharePoint. All the syntax and everything is all coming from from content management and everything from SharePoint. It's these SharePoint's got such a big impact on M365 as a whole. So we always like to start with this one. But the other thing that we like to talk about is how you can take everything from this on-prem and it will fit very well on the cloud, specifically on the Power Platform. So for example, if you see on this left side of the screen over here, this is what we call the on-premise stuff. Anywhere from forms, data connections, reports, code languages, all of these are to this day also still being used on SharePoint on-prem. But if you want to do a side-by-side comparison, like if this is all the stuff that I'm using on-prem, where does it go ahead and fit on the cloud? The answer to that is yes. All of these things, for example, if you're using SharePoint Designer custom pages, if you're using Infopad Designer custom forms, if you're using basic list forms, well, they will all fit into Power Apps and Power Automate right over there. If you're building any of from the reporting standpoint, from two big ones are Excel and Tableau, or Excel and reporting services, SSRS. Well, they will fit into Power BI. And then you've got so many of these coding languages over here. Like this section is out of scope for this session over here, but we still want to call that out, is that if you're a coding person on-prem, there is room for that online as well. So this concept of consolidation in the cloud is something that Reza and I have seen across the company. These are some of the companies that we've seen. We've seen it across the globe, is what I meant. We've seen this happening in companies. And so we've kind of give you a very holistic approach of how on-prem can still go to the cloud and do a side-by-side comparison over there. So just with all of that little background, our agenda for today is to talk about the entire Power Platform content over with SharePoint, starting from the Power BI. We always call Power BI as the big brother because I was the first member of the family that came up. So how you're able to go ahead and analyze the data with Power BI, automate the data with Power Automate, act upon something data with or a situation using Power Apps, and finally chat and collaborate using Power Virtual Agents. All of this can be done with SharePoint, and that's going to be our main focus over here for the day. So let's first start with ACT. The concept of ACT comes from how am I going to take a situation and act upon it? How am I going to take a data source and act upon it? And that's where Power Apps is a really good competitor for that, because you can do it both using customized forms, which is with SharePoint, and using Canvas apps, again, with SharePoint Data Connector. And then, there are some fundamental differences between the two, and Reza is going to demo on this, so he'll actually show you, so I'm not going to steal that thunder piece of that. But the fundamental difference is just the key outlines we're going to talk about is customized forms is built in SharePoint lists right off the bat. And it is a very limited version of the Power Apps Canvas Studio. And this is the one that we spend a little bit more time on talking about, is because sometimes, unless, I'm pretty sure everybody on this session know that, customized form is Power Apps. You can watch the URL over there. But it's important that you understand it's a lightweight version of the Canvas Studio, which means you cannot go ahead and export that as an app. You cannot go and export that as a zip file or an MS-APP file. You can't do all that. It's a very lightweight version, and it's very tied to SharePoint directly on that SharePoint list over there. So something to keep in mind, that it doesn't have all of those things. Now, this is a scenario where it's suitable for adding and editing data only, which means that you don't really need to have a whole table or a gallery. Now, there are some demos that both Reza and I have done in our videos where we've kind of contradicted that a little bit. And what we did was we stayed where when you want to go in and put data in the gallery, you don't want to do connecting to over 2,000 items over there and you're doing a search in the gallery, because that's not what SharePoint customized form is for. You already have a list. You can already filter all the items in the list. On top of the list, you've got a place to go and do all the search. So don't go and replicate that process directly in the customized form. The customized form is to do a lot of good editing, a lot of good customization from a form standpoint. That's the functionality of that. So it's suitable for adding and editing over there. Now let's switch gears and talk about it from the Power App standpoint. And in fact, one of the things that Reza and I do a lot, I know I talk to my customers a lot about that, is that if you get if either your customer doesn't ask you, or if you are the one who's given the choice, go with the Canvas apps first. Because what you can do is you can build a Canvas app, and then using the Power Apps widget, you can go ahead and embed that app into a SharePoint page. At the end of the day, end users won't even notice the difference. They will just think about that, oh, it's a Power Apps form, or it's a form, and I just go to the SharePoint page, and over there it is. But what's going to happen is that you are going to become a hero overnight, because I guarantee you, somebody's going to come and ask you, saying that, man, this is a great form. Can I view it from my app, or can I view it from my mobile device? And that's when you say, I got it. Here it is. Go, you download this Power Apps mobile app device, so then you can see the exact same thing as an app. So kind of, I'm already giving you you're already a few steps ahead of your customers over there. But the standalone app gives you the full fidelity of the Canvas App Studio. That's the key thing. That's the key takeaway. And it also helps in the migration processes. So if you were given an option between the two, standalone app can be the one, and you can always go ahead and embed that. And like I already mentioned, it's the full version of that. So this is basically where I'm going to pause, and Reza is going to show some great demos on that, and then we'll switch over and talk it from the automated standpoint. Go ahead, Reza.
Thank you, Dan. I think that sets the precedent perfectly. I'm going to switch over to my screen share. Dan, I'll need your confirmation on this, that you can see my screen.
I can see it now.
You
your
can see
Power
it?
Automate one. I mean, your SharePoint side.
SharePoint. I got worried. Okay.
No, yeah.
All right. So modern SharePoint communication site or modern SharePoint team site. To begin with, let me go ahead and create a simple SharePoint list. And in the interest of time, I'll pick an existing template. One of them is an issue tracker template. So I'll pick this. This is a Microsoft list template that comes with specific columns and some column formatting. I will go ahead and use this template and give this a name, Power Platform User Group, Issue Tracker, and I will go ahead and create my list. Now, when you create a list or a library experience in SharePoint, the number one thing that you will focus on is your forms. Yes, you will focus on the columns you need as part of your list or library, but users will want to create records in that list or library experience, and you want to add metadata related to those records. And to do that, you will be interacting with those form experiences. When I click on new in a modern SharePoint list experience, it lights up the standard SharePoint form experience in the right-hand side panel. And you can see how fluid this is. I click new, it just slides in from the right, and it has all the columns in there. Now, I know the session focuses on Power Apps here, but it's very important to note that even SharePoint itself out of the box has a lot to offer. For example, if I go right here, I can edit the columns and decide which columns I would like to show as part of this form. I can even go ahead and configure the layout of this form using JSON, just simple JSON. I can group things, move things across. There are nice things you can do out of the box with what SharePoint provides. I see a lot of folks jumping directly into Power Apps. Why? Because you have that tool available. It's easy to customize using Power Apps. Yes, it is, but what about the native feature set that is provided by SharePoint? There are many benefits in this experience over what Power Apps has to offer. However, there are many limitations here as well. For example, you cannot change the branding of that form experience. There's very little you can do with that. Some very common scenarios, I want to create sections in this. Yeah, you can do that, but can I create tab experiences? No. Can I create cascading dropdowns? No. Can I get data from another list or library or SQL or some other system of record? No. You are in SharePoint, you're dealing with a SharePoint form. You are limited to what that list or library has for you. So if your requirements are very simple manipulation of columns and sections, SharePoint forms are a good option, and that you can do directly right here in this experience. Now coming to the folks who come from the old school SharePoint background like Dan and I. If you remember, we used to customize our SharePoint forms using InfoPath. If you are continuing to do that, highly recommend you to stop. If you've already invested in it, fair enough. That is all valid up until 2026. That's when the support is. That does not mean it's going away. It's going to be there, just not supported. So you might as well continue to use it if you have heavily invested in that. However, if you're building something new, and if today you're using InfoPath, you're making a mistake. If you're starting from scratch and you need a customized form experience, right in the ribbon itself, we have integration. And this is what our session is all about. First up is Power Apps. Now with Power Apps, you get a couple of options. Create an app and customize forms. See all apps will basically show you all the apps. So you can either create a standalone app that users can leverage to interact with your list or library experience, or you can directly customize the SharePoint form experience, very similar to what you used to do in InfoPath. So first up, let's try and do that. I will click on Customize Form. And the moment I do that, if my network connection works well, and if this likes it, it doesn't look like it does. Let me try and refresh my screen and try this again. Maybe I need to show more patience. All right, so what it does right now is it is launching Power Apps for me, and it is going to create an app. It still is an app technically that will be connected to my SharePoint list form experience. So I'm just waiting for that app experience to light up. And while it does, to give you a very simple example of how that experience would look like, here I have a content scheduler list wherein I schedule my content about my upcoming videos and blog ideas. When I click New, on the right-hand side is that same SharePoint customized form experience that opens in the panel. However, this is Power Apps, right? Here, I have made some modifications. I've kind of created this tabbed interface for me to add information, right? I can bring in data from other data sources. I can do a lot more. So if you need to light up these experiences, you can leverage Power Apps. And I was talking because I wanted this app to start up. So here's my app based on the issue tracker Power Platform user group. For now, I'll just change the theme of this app, which I have. And let's say I give this a label header right here that just says that this is a Power App. Okay. Now, benefits of this kind of a customization is a lot. These are Power Apps. So I can go to data, go to add data and connect to any other data source of my choice, leveraging the over 500 connectors available today. You cannot do that in standard customized SharePoint list forms. You cannot. With Power Apps, you have the ability to connect. You can bring in AI. You can bring in services in Azure. You can call cloud flows. You can create experiences that span beyond the spectrum of what SharePoint has to offer, thanks to this ability for us to bring in those data connectors. And once you have your app built out, I will head over to File and click Save. This is a SharePoint customized form. So if you notice, the publish option is not publishing to Power Apps, rather it is publishing to SharePoint. These kind of experiences only light up inside the SharePoint list or library where you have customized the form. If I go to my mobile device, make.powerapps.com on the web, or if I try go to the Power Apps App Store and try and install and run this, I won't see it. The only way I will get to it is if I go to that SharePoint list experience. Once I have this customized.
Save as, yeah, Reza, and the save as was grayed out over there.
Oh yeah, save as was grayed out because you cannot save that on the Power Apps space. So now if I head back to my SharePoint list and click New, Reza, you just customized it. Why didn't it show up? Well, caching. There is some level of browser caching involved here. So as I clear my browser cache and I click on New, this lights up a new form experience for me. Let's say I create an issue. I had audio issues to begin with. So I'll say I had some audio issues. Priority was high. I'll save that. So it creates that record in that SharePoint list. It's just like a SharePoint form. It's connected. If I was to open this, it will show me that same record. If I was to edit this, I can make changes to it. I change the priority to critical, save. I can see those changes being reflected. These are customized forms. Now, there's one caveat here to these kind of experiences. Of course, they are not mobile ready yet. Even if you sign into the SharePoint mobile app and try and launch this, it will not launch. It doesn't start the Power App experience. Rather, it will go to the standard form experience. So there are limitations with this at the moment, which I'm hoping the Microsoft team is working on. I know the answer, but I can't disclose. So I'll tell you, hopefully they are working on it. And if you want to ever switch between forms, maybe you built a Power Apps form, but you want to go back to the standard experience, or maybe old school, you have an InfoPath form you want to go back to, you go to settings and go to list settings. This should take me to an option called form settings. And right here, you have the ability to decide which experience to choose. Do I need the SharePoint form? Do I use the Power Apps form? Or do I want to use the form that I have customized in InfoPath? So all three options are open for you. You need to choose which approach you take. They are all valid and they are all dependent upon your scenario at hand. So these are form customizations. And the last option that I want to show in the same realm is the ability to create a standalone app. And the easiest way to do that is, once again, go to Power Apps and say, I want to create an app. Now, this time you're actually creating an app. So I'm going to call this my Power Platform User Group Issue Tracker app. This will be a Power App that I can run directly from my mobile device or the browser experience. And this will go directly to the Power Apps experience and not be connected or interconnected with that SharePoint list form. So that's what it's going to be generating now. And it will create a standard sample 3-screen app experience where you can view all the data in your list. You can create records, edit records, delete records, full CRUD operations. It will respect the security of your SharePoint site. Plus, you have the ability to customize this further as and when required. So for example, it is showcasing the list of issues. I only have one. Initially, I even had video issues when I was joining this call. So I'll say I had video issues as well. And it adds that record as well to my SharePoint list. So that's more or less about this. It is customization of your experiences in SharePoint, either as a standalone app or connected to SharePoint. Before I hand it back to Dan, it's important to note that this also works with document library experiences. I think many folks don't utilize this feature because they always think about customizations in terms of forms. So here I have a document library. I have styled this using standard JSON formatting in SharePoint. It's called view formatting here. And if I go to the list view, you will observe that I have created an edit icon, so I can edit the metadata of these documents that I upload in this library. If I click on edit, and this is probably one of the best examples of, at least my best examples, of how you can integrate multiple things together. This is a document library. When this panel opened up on the right-hand side, it is showcasing the properties of my document here. I have included a map control experience. It's a control in Power Apps. It's a live map to showcasing the location of the customer based on the customer address. So I can plot that on a world map, live map here. I can even show the preview of the document that I am currently editing the properties for. Here is the preview of that document. I have interconnected this with a secondary list wherein I can create a checklist of items that I need to do respective to this document. So here is my checklist of items. I can select them and say whether I've completed this checklist or not. I can create new tasks. I'm relating this library to a list, and all of this is only possible by leveraging Power Apps. So these are the kind of integration experiences you can bring into play if you extend what you have in SharePoint through your forms experiences by leveraging Power Apps. And all of this also works with Microsoft lists. Microsoft lists are nothing but SharePoint lists at the back end. So the same automation, the same customization experiences that you see here will work for Microsoft lists as well. So that's about the act part, wherein you are acting on your data. We are performing CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete of our data coming in from SharePoint. I will hand it back to Dan.
Cool. Yeah. So that's just a really good overview, and I like how Reza has gone ahead and given you, the full overview of some simple, easy building apps to some really good complex one, both in the list and in the document library. I'm glad we ended with the document library piece because that's the one that people don't tend to use a whole lot for reasons about not enough data over there or files not being used heavily. But that's just a good example of how document libraries can also help. So now let's talk about Automate. And one of the things about Power Apps and Power Automate, if you want to really keep track of, when each of these 4 members of the family were released, the Power Apps and Power Automate were actually released at the same time. And so we always, talk about them side by side. So just for your knowledge, it was Power BI first. That's why we called the big brother, Power Apps and Power Automate, and then came Power Virtual Agents. So on Power Automate, Power Automate is a workflow process for in terms of, at least from SharePoint standpoint, and it comes in 2 flavors. It comes with Automate, and then it comes with Integrate. It's called Power Automate Workflows. So you will always hear the term Automate Rules versus Power Automate Workflows, and it's important to understand that both of them overall use Power Automate. Just the same example that we talked about Power Apps and the customized forms. It's a lightweight version of Power Apps. And then you have the Power Apps Canvas apps. Same thing over here. The Power Apps from the Power Automate rules are still using Power Automate in the backend, just very lightweight versions of that. While Power Automate on the right side, when you go to integrate, this is where you can go ahead and actually use Power Apps as a full fidelity to build some really heavy workflows over there. One of the things that we actually don't cover a whole lot, but I'll just say that in passing, is the concept of connectors. We have, Microsoft has done it such that they classify them as 2 types of connections. And it's just as the term goes, like, what is the connection that you're using with your app or with your workflow? What is this connection? That's the term, which is called as connectors. And the connectors come in 2 iterations. They come as standard and Premier. And then the standard is one of the ones which are used a lot. SharePoint is a standard connector, and it's used a lot because any of the people who've got their Microsoft 365 enterprise license or a business license, those by default give you the flexibility to use the standard connector. So you out of the box functionality with SharePoint comes a lot of power with it, with the Power Platform. So when you focus a little bit on building on these workflows, when you start building them specifically from the Power Automate workflows, these are the 2 big ones that are honestly used. Automated Cloud Workflow is an example where you go ahead and create a SharePoint list, and when a new item is created, or an existing item is edited, or when an item is deleted, that will automatically trigger your Power Automate flow, hence the term automated flow. Now over here on the scheduled one, that's another option that you have. In the scheduled workflows, you can go ahead and trigger the workflow based on your time and date. And it's actually pretty neat. We'll show you in the demos that you can isolate that down to how many times I want to run it in the day, or how many times I want to run it on a week. Specifically, I just want to run it on a Tuesday or a Friday. You can do stuff like that at that specific granularity level. It's pretty powerful over there. Now, I will end with, before Reza jumps into his demos, I want to talk about this one really. It's so important that we build a slide and we took a screenshot of this. Now, if any of you are flow builders, and if you've been building workflows for a while, you probably heard about this. And if you don't know about this, if you're a fresh person in, we're giving you some key information right off the bat. So SharePoint has something called as a get items action. And that action means, I can go ahead and get this information and act upon it. When Power Automate first came out, there was this process that people had come up with, and I'll admit it, even Microsoft had talked about this whole functionality that I'm going to pull all the information from the SharePoint list, and then I'll base a condition. I'll base a condition saying that if all this information, if any of the items in the row matches a certain criteria, then go ahead and carry out an action. The problem with that technology or that concept was you're pulling all the information from the get-go. This is the way you really want to do it. This is the correct way you want to do it. Because what happens is it's an OData query, but it does a server-side call, which means before even pulling all the information, it is going ahead and talking directly to the SharePoint in the magical cloud environment that, hey, I only want to go ahead and get the items that match this certain query, the certain criteria. And based on that, it will only pull those information, limited amount, and then you will be able to go ahead and act upon, automate that using your Power Automate. What you've saved yourself, besides the fact that there's a performance time hit, you've solved the performance type over there, is you solved timing, because some of these things flows can just run and run and run. That's because it's going and pulling all the information. Now you just saved yourself some time on that. So from a Power Automate standpoint, if you haven't heard of anything, listen to this one. Is that if you're comfortable with it, you started using some templates and now you want to improve on your logic, do these type of filter queries, and they usually don't show up automatically. That's why you see the hide options are shown over there. You go and get the get items, and then you select the advanced options. There'll be a little bit option on the bottom. Click on the advanced options and you use this type of filter query. By the way, that filter query is not just a SharePoint thing. You can go and do that with Dataverse tables. You can go ahead and do that with SQL tables as well. It's a pretty powerful logic that you can apply to other data sources as well. So I'll go and hand that over to Reza, and he's going to show you some really awesome demos over there.
All right. I'm going to try and share my screen once again. Are the demos awesome or not? We'll leave that to the audience. Let's go.
Yep, I can see it.
You can see my screen? All right.
Yep.
Okay, so this one, we are back to our SharePoint list that I created for this session, which is the issue tracker PPUG, Power Platform User Group. Now, when I went to integrate, we had the option for creating apps, but we also have options for automation. Now, automation here comes in two forms, and Dan mentioned that briefly in the presentation. I can leverage Power Automate to create flows that are connected to the SharePoint list. Those flows can run on a schedule, they can run on demand, or they can run automatically depending upon a scenario. Three types. However, just like we have customized forms using Power Apps, and I told you SharePoint has something native you can leverage. You don't have to go to Power Apps. Very similar lines. We have Automate right here. And here we have the ability to set rules, create rules. So for this list of mine, my issue tracker list, let me go ahead and create a rule live on the fly. Now this is out of the box. Okay, this is purely out of the box. Notify someone when a column changes, a column value changes to something specific, a new record is created, a record is deleted. That's pretty neat, right? You have all your standard options covered here. Of course, you're not going to have complex scenarios covered here, but if you are looking for something basic, like if the status of my issue tracker gets resolved, go ahead and give me a notification. So let's try to do that. When a column value changes, okay, which column? I'll pick status. Condition is what? Completed. When the status is completed, go and send an email. To whom? To the person who the task is assigned to the creator, modified by, or just send me an email. And I'll click create. So just like that, I created a rule for myself. Now, whenever any status in that list goes to complete, I'll be notified about it. The beauty of rules is you can create up to, I believe, in fact, it's right here. You can create up to 15 rules per list, and you can turn them on and turn them off on the fly. And these rules will apply to all users as long as you have the conditions specified right here. For example, I could have said sent an email to anyone who this task is assigned to. So whoever is assigned to will get the notification. So here's my rule in action. Let's try this out. I'll pick this existing record and edit this. And this is Power Apps now, so you can see both working together. I'll change the status to complete and click save. Now, the moment I do that, the column value changed. The rule was if the column value changes to complete, go ahead and notify Reza. Now, I'm waiting for that notification to come in. I think it takes up to a minute or so before it comes in. But once it does, you will see how it notifies me about a task changing its status by leveraging the rules feature. And all I did was go to automate and simply create a rule experience for myself. So that's the easiest way for you to notify people. The next step is to take it a level ahead. And of course, automation is not just about notification, right? Many a times automation is about, let's say, an approval process. An issue tracker comes in. I would like to send this to a list of users so that they can approve this issue. They can tell me that this issue is fixed, a very common scenario. This time I'll go to Power Automate and I will say I want to create a flow. On the right hand side, it will list out all the templates that are related to SharePoint inside of Power Automate. And there are hundreds of template options that you can choose from, or you can say, I want to go ahead and see more templates, or I want to create my own flow from scratch. In this case, I want to show you one template that I'm really fond of. It's called request approval for a selected item. That means a user can select an item and start an approval process. Now, this may not suffice all your requirements around approvals, but trust me, it will get you at least 50% of the way there. And it's a template, so you can take it and you can customize it. Let me show you how. I'll pick this flow. So this will go ahead and create a flow for me, leveraging that template and connect it to that specific SharePoint list. I will click create. So it goes ahead and creates the flow. Okay, the flow is created. I will edit the flow and give it a nice name, send for approval. I will click on save. So my flow is called send or end for approval. That's okay, end for approval. So what does this flow do? For a selected item, that means when the user selects an item in that specific SharePoint list, because you can see it's connected to that list, I will ask a set of questions to the user, right? Please enter a message you want to send to your approvers. Who are your approvers? Go pick them. Do you want to send reminders for approvals? How frequently do you want to remind them? What are the different options? What is the duration of the reminder? This is a template that has all that code baked into Power Automate for you. Trust me, many people keep asking, how do I send reminders for approvals? How do I select my own approvers dynamically? Well, guess what? This template has that entire pattern. You can either steal from it or you can customize this. If you don't need these things, go ahead and remove it. In the interest of time, and because I don't want to call it end, let me change the name again to send for approval and save the flow. We are not ending yet. So this goes ahead and saves my flow. This time, if I head back to my SharePoint list and refresh this, here is my video issue related to videos. This time, if I select this and go to automate, you will notice that it shows send for approval. You see that thing light up there, send for approval. So it's lighting the flow in the context of a selected item in SharePoint. That's very powerful. Now, of course, if you notice, I had 3 clicks to get there, but you could use column formatting like I did in the library experience. I had that little edit icon. I click and it opens it. Similar thing here. So I'll click on this. Now, when I click that, because it's the first time I'm running this flow, it will ask me to adhere or approve the connections that the flow uses. So I'll say, OK, this is power. This is a form experience before starting the flow. So for example, what is the message you want to send to your approvers? I'll say, please check this issue. I have resolved it. Right? That's my message I will send to my approvers. Now check this out. Who are my approvers? This is a people picker column right here inside the side panel experience. So I'll send this to maybe Reza. So I'll pick Reza. I need to pick the right Reza. And I will send this to another user, Sarah. So I can define who my approvers are. Do I want to send them reminders? I'll say, yeah, I want to send them reminders if they don't respond. Send them a weekly reminder and give them 1 reminder every week. Right? So using this, I can define dynamically what my flow will do. And when I click run, this will go ahead and start that workflow process. It will go ahead and start that flow. And just to confirm, if I go to the details of this flow, you will see the flow is now in running status. It ran for that item 6 seconds ago, and it's now waiting for the approval task, which has gone out to Reza and Sarah, my approvers who I picked dynamically. Now, if I go back to my email, let me see if we got any good stuff. So let's go back to the rule stuff. Here is the rule in action. I got the email that says Reza changed the status to completed. Fast notification using rules. I can click on go to item. It will take me directly to that specific item. I customized it using Power Apps. So Power Apps comes alive right here. And my approval, which I created using Power Automate, here is that approval in action. The approval task went to Reza. The approval task went to Sarah. There, I mentioned about the item. Here is the message that I put in when I started the flow, and the approver can either approve this or reject this. They even have a link directly to that item inside of SharePoint. Here's the video issue list item. All of this out of the box. I only clicked on the template and I started it. I'll go to approve and say all good and submit. The moment I do this, we can see the flow live in action. The approval is responded. The wait for an approval task will move ahead, and then the process will complete. So the idea here is that you can leverage the power of approvals to take you forward. Now, you can take this to the next level in terms of document approvals. So here I have a library of documents. It's a standard SharePoint documents library, by the way. All I have done is customize the look and feel to make it look nice. So here, if I was to upload a file, let's say I upload contract document E, once that document comes in, the status of that document is new. Now I have a trigger in flow, and I believe this is my flow. This flow triggers automatically when a file is created in this library called document review. So the trigger here is different. It's an automated flow. Reza added the file. That flow will get triggered. Once it gets triggered, the status of this new in some time will change to pending. That's what this does. Then it starts the approval process, dynamically picks the approvers based on a SharePoint group, and then based on the responses, it will plug in the number of people who said yes, the number of people who said no to the approval, and create a quorum style of approval. You can see the status changed on the fly to pending. I have 3 approvers. We are waiting their responses. That's the kind of experiences you can bring in play if you leverage the formatting options in SharePoint and you back that up with Power Apps for creating forms and then automations using Power Automate. So the power is endless here. And there's BI as well. There's dashboarding as well that Dan will be showcasing very shortly. One small thing before I close out. Dan also mentioned about running flows on a schedule. So here's the schedule cloud flow, which is very powerful, right? You can run reports. So let's say I have a SharePoint list of work progress tracker items. And as you can see, this list has thousands of items in it. Now, many a times we would like those daily reports sent out to us by flow. Show me all the items that are outstanding as of today. So how about this? Outstanding items. Run this every day, and I can decide when I would like to run this flow. Run it every morning at 8 o'clock. Go and grab the data that's outstanding and send me my report. Now I'll click create. So this creates a flow based on the schedule that I defined, which of course I can change. Now, the key thing I want to show here is this is what everyone does. They use get items. OK, and we say I want to get data from SharePoint. All right, what is your SharePoint site URL? My SharePoint site URL is rdtech. What's the name of your list? My list is work progress tracker. And then we go ahead and we start adding conditions, right? Give me everything where the status is in progress, not complete, or whatever. The problem with this is, if I just stop here and save the flow, in fact, I love Power Automate. It's already telling me that. It's giving me the problem on the right-hand side. It says, you are using get items action, but you are not using that OData filter that Dan was talking about. You're not filtering your data. You're not getting the data that you need. You're not making SharePoint do the work. You are just bringing in all the data into flow, and then you're asking flow to do the work. Am I really interested in all that data in my SharePoint list? No, I just need the data where the progress, for example, maybe that's my use case. I only need those where the progress is not started. I only have 2 items in that 1,000 thing and run that in SharePoint in Power Automate. So instead of doing that, what you could do is go to advanced options and apply filter queries. Now I'll tell you what, and this is probably something for Dan as well. This is a painful experience. Putting in filter queries is painful. I hate it. I absolutely hate putting in filter queries because it needs internal names and you have to be accurate and all that stuff. Now, guess what? Go to settings on the top right, Go to view all Power Automate settings and turn on the experimental feature and click save. Okay. It's experimental. It can change, it can break. That's okay. But let me show you something. This time, if I go to get items, and let's say I connect to that same SharePoint site, if I can find it, and that same SharePoint list, if I can find it. This time, if you look at filter query, you see that it's made easy for us. You don't like to write OData queries, no problem. Don't write. But now check this out, right? Give me everything where the title is equal to Reza. So it will only give me the ones where the word Reza is there in the title, is equal to. A simple filter query is what I can perform. But more importantly, I can switch to code mode and grab the OData filter as well, like Robert, steal it. There are still more advancements to come. You won't see choice columns. You won't see lookup columns, which are very common scenarios. They are coming. They are coming. I did a full video on this, if I'm not mistaken, a year ago, wherein I show every column. So if you want to apply filters on any column, manage metadata, lookup, it's all covered. So go ahead, check that out. And just wanted to show this because I know this is coming, and the Microsoft team listens. So I'm really looking forward to this feature. Back to Dan.
Yeah, if you haven't seen my GIF, experiment equals play and learn, but do not use that in production. It can cause big explosions. Because I mean, okay, it hasn't happened recently though, but since, I mean, I've been with Power Apps and Power Platform for 5 years now. I have personally seen, in Power Apps at least, things have come in as experimental and things have gone. They never hit production. So I've seen that side of it as well. So I've always been a little, cautiously optimistic is how I like to call it. Cool. Let's jump into the other piece over here. In fact, if you have time, I'll show you something, because since I just released that video, I have this new demo. It was this one right here. So the example that we talked about of you creating the automate rules. This list of mine has a bunch of these rules, and if I go and see the rules, these are how it looks like. You can actually see the rules. You can go and toggle them on and off. But the example that I had was when a price changes. Like price is basically a price type column. It's keeping track of all the columns. But if it goes ahead and changes to go ahead and send an email notification, that's basically all that it does, is it's sending an email notification, right? It's literally that simple though. When price changes, send email to me. But if you were to try to replicate something like that, a volume and apply changes in Power Automate, this is the type of work that it needs. I mean, besides the fact that you've got to go and trigger it, you've got to go ahead and, get a filter applied over there. Then you've got to go ahead and apply all of this new other actions and conditions. Literally, this is what it is. It's a new action and condition to go and grab the ID, go ahead and use another functionality for the trigger outputs. Then you're going and applying a condition just to send you that email notification. So that example which Reza and I just showed you, it's literally just a simple few clicks. That's all it is, simple few clicks. But if you went and build it through Power Automate, there's some work involved. So that's what, the point Reza and I are trying to make is that take a look at those rules first, because they'll solve your problems a lot easier, a lot faster. All right. So let me not digress and let me jump into our Power BI integration piece. Now, Power BI, like we said, was one of the first members of the Power Platform family. So it has a built-in integration with SharePoint over there. So that's basically what it is. I'll go to the SharePoint list and you'll be able to see how I can go and visualize the data directly from a business intelligence standpoint, hence the term Power BI. So I'll show you a quick demo on that, and then I want to cover a few important things over there. So here is the SharePoint list, and I've got close to 2,000 items in this SharePoint list over here, and I want to give you that number so you have something to keep in mind. Now, granted, with the functionality that I have in my view, I could go ahead and improve the look and feel this in a little nicer way, more appealing way. But a simple and easy way to do, and I'm doing this right now in front of you, is I can just go to integrate, I can go to Power BI, and I can just click on this, visualize this list. And immediately it opens up another tab. It's already going ahead and creating, taking the data, assessing it. And this Power BI report was made in front of you in less than 10 seconds with just one click. That's all it did. I had to do nothing else. Now it also gives you the functionality that if you want to go and pick something else, or in other filters, these filter functionalities, you can go and do that. And then when you go and publish it to this list, all it's going to, you can go and name it whatever you want. So I'll go and say the meal order, and I'll go ahead and publish it. Keep in mind that this report, you will not find it when you log into your Power BI. You will only find this over here, and I'll just refresh it just to make sure. You come over here to Power BI, and then that's it. It shows up right there. So key thing over here was that we didn't have to open up Power BI. We didn't have to go and make any data connections over there. None of that. Just go ahead and directly create it inside your Power BI, and you're able to see it. And it gives you some functionality to go ahead and even view that. So key things over there that I want to point out is some of these items that Microsoft has already called out, is that the first time you visualize a list or library, creating what's called as a data set, it can take a little bit of time, which basically that's not just a Power BI thing. We've noticed that across other things, especially in Power Automate. Remember the task that we were just building right now? The first time you create a flow and you trigger it, it can take up to a minute. Even with the SharePoint list, we've noticed that, but that's usually the first time. Key things over here that I want to also talk about in Power BI is that the root level security isn't supported for these type of Power BIs, because root level security, or RLS, is something that is very commonly built in Power BI reports. When you go and build them in Power BI using the the Power BI, either the desktop software or the website, that currently doesn't apply over here. Then also some complex column text in the SharePoint will show up as not the actual column data, but it shows up as records or list. And then there's some refresh delays over there. I can take up once every hours. Very large lists, all the data may not come in all together. And then the feature isn't supported for guest users and tenant. Now, a question we get asked on this a lot is that, well, what type of licensing do I need? Do I need to go ahead and have a Power BI Pro license for that? I said, no. What we just did right now out of the box, what I just did to you right now, the very fact that I was able to open it up, see everything was good, save it, and it shows up directly on a SharePoint list, that does not need an additional license whatsoever. It's when you go and start creating any customizations to that Power BI, that's, and when you start Power BI and you yourself are doing that to go and edit the visualizations over there, all the tiling structure, going in and filtering some of the formulas, that's when it will actually go ahead and take that Power BI and apply it to your My Workspace. And for that, it will go ahead and need that Power BI Pro license. So there's something to keep in mind, is that simple quick visualizations, save it directly to the SharePoint list. That's where it'll that doesn't need any additional licenses, and that doesn't show up on your Power BI My Workspace. It'll only show up over here. All right. Cool. So we've got time. Yeah, let's go ahead and actually switch over now to Power Virtual Agent, and that's basically our last member of the big Power Platform family. Now, even though Power Virtual Agent is the last member of the Power Virtual family, I always like to look at it from a pillar standpoint, where you will always see PVA or Power Virtual Agents right on the top of the pillar or the pyramid, because it fits upon all these other important things as well. Because PVA right now, as we stand, and that's going to change a little bit. If we have time, we'll talk about that. PVA right now is also very dependent on Power Automate to go ahead and make connections to other services. For example, I'll show you a demo right now where it's PVA, it's a chatbot system, but we want to go ahead and actually pull data from SharePoint lists. And that's what all of this, we need to use Power Automate to do that, to create a workflow and do all of the discussions. That's basically this example that I wanted to show, was that when you've got Power Virtual Agents on one side and you're going to go ahead and talk to SharePoint, right now, as we stand, we are going to be needing the Power Automate. There is discussions, and we've only heard that, and this, by the way, this none of that is NDA stuff, is that they're planning. It's also, they've put that on the roadmap. We don't know where it is that potentially everything should, there should be like a built-in workflow process directly inside PVA. The product group has heard us give that feedback to them, and they're good at listening. So somewhere down the road, that may happen, is that we won't even have to use Power Automate. You just go ahead and create the connector with SharePoint connector directly inside Power Virtual Agents and just leverage it directly over there. But that's like a way outside in the plan. Right now, as we stand, you can go ahead and use, you have to use Power Automate to build that. I'll show you a demo on it. But there's two ways to do that. Since this is a very SharePoint-centric session, you can take that Power Virtual Agent and embed that directly into SharePoint. It's very simple to do that. Or if you, and there's widgets, by the way, there's SharePoint widgets which will allow you to go and do that. But if you're already a developer, you can use SharePoint framework to build web parts, and that web part can actually be very responsive too. It'll fill the real estate value of your entire page based on your your laptop's in a screen size, and make it fill a little bit more value and make those Power BI the chatbots a little bit bigger. Otherwise, if you don't really care too much of that, using the example I'm just going to show you like that, you can also just go ahead and use the embedded HTML web part on that. So let me actually just show you the demo piece on that. All right, so I'll jump in, and right over here in my site over here, it's a SharePoint site, and right here I'm going to go ahead and ask start a discussion. I'm going to say hi there, right? And there's my chatbot that's kicking in right there. This is Power Virtual Agents in action. And so I'm going to say, need device info. All right. Basically, this is a place where I'm going ahead and, a website that my company has created for me, where I can go and get some information about my new desktop refresh or laptop refresh, or as a new employee, a new laptop, something where I just want to go and see what are my options for these new devices that are coming over here. And this is basically it. I just go over here, and instead of clicking on a form or instead of going and refreshing a list, I just have a chatbot discussion with the bot to see what are my options for these devices. So I'll go and say, okay, I'm just going to select an Acer. Great. So it asked me what my manufacturer I'm interested in. I said Acer. Then it said, what kind of device are you interested in? Are you a laptop, tablet, all in one? I'm going to say laptop. Now, based on all of these two informations that I provided to the chatbot, right now it is running a flow. It's going on and running a flow, and it's actually doing that get call, the one that we just showed you as an example, to go ahead and filter everything from the SharePoint side. There's a flow that's actually doing it, and it will go ahead, and if it was a perfect world, it will actually send me an information right now. Something is happened, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. What we'll do is that actually display it perfectly, all the items that I have, and let's see what happens. So there was some error. I think that's because my screen was left open for a while. This specific browser, I may have to just go ahead and re-authenticate it. That's probably what happened. Let me just refresh it. We'll go and test it directly in this chatbot section over here. So the demo that I showed you, I want to show you how I've actually went ahead and made it. All right. So before we do that, this is your Power Virtual Agents. Like, keep in mind, this is your standalone Power Virtual Agents. This is where you can go log into or sign into directly your Power Virtual Agents. And then based on, this is the look and feel of the entire thing. On the top right, you can actually go and select which environment you want to go in and build your Power Virtual Agents. Keep in mind, these are the exact same environments that you see in Power Apps and Power Automate. It's the exact same thing. But common misunderstanding is that, well, is it a one bot per one environment? And that's no. I mean, I'm giving you an example here. This is my environment that I selected, and I can go in and put in multiple bots on this section over here. So once I've gone ahead and selected my, the environment that I want to go, and I go and create a bot, then I want to say, well, what is my topic for the chatbot discussion? And as the name suggests, that's what it is. Like, what is the topic of the discussion? And the topic of the discussion, once you create it, the key thing to trigger the discussion is the trigger phrases. So when I go and now start, actually, I want to go one step back. When I go and start working on building the bots, this is where I go ahead and add all my trigger phrases. Actually, that's kind of interesting. The trigger phrases right there. I actually just noticed that yesterday, so you guys are in for a treat. Before, this trigger phrases option was not here. You would actually have to go to a separate place to put all the trigger phrases, but now you can directly, while you are in your bot's logic over here, you can go ahead and build that. I may have to build a video on this one. We'll see. But the trigger phrases is what what will trigger the conversation with the bot. So the example that I just showed you over there, where looking for some info, that was one of the trigger phrases. Now keep in mind, the trigger phrases doesn't have to be one for one or very accurate. As long as it kind of understands what the trigger phrases is, its natural language understanding functionality will pick up which questions that you want. And then based on that, it will actually go ahead and give you, the discussion. Because remember, you have multiple topics. So the bot system will actually be smart enough to figure out, okay, the trigger, the question that Daniel has asked is very relevant to this topic. And then it will go and trigger the chatbot discussion of that topic. So there's multiple ones over here that are available. You have to also do a little bit of designing when you start making this bigger and bigger, is that let my trigger phrases not overlap. And another interesting thing, which is actually announced at the Ignite of, I think it was the March Ignite. March, April 1, where they're making it, putting AI learning into it so that if any of the trigger phrases were overlapping, it will give you alerts now that, hey, your triggers are kind of overlapping. It might trigger up potentially these two topics. So it's kind of helping you to do all of that as well. All right. I'll share a little tidbit over here with you is that when you are starting to make production type of environments for your topics, these lessons, you want to go and toggle them off because it's a great lesson to learn. In fact, I've learned a lot from just reverse engineering from all of these 4 lessons. But any of your environments that you're using specifically for production ones, you want to go ahead and turn these off because sometimes they can go ahead and jump in over there. But let me just show you this example. So this is the one that I went ahead and actually showed you the demo. It is going ahead and asking me all of these questions. You know, what is the device, the manufacturer? I pick the manufacturer. Based on whatever manufacturer I select, I save it into a variable. Then I go ahead and ask another question is what type of device you want? Well, laptop, tablet, all in one. I take that, save it into another variable. And so I'm going ahead and building all my information. Like, okay, this is what the user wants. He wants this manufacturer, this device type. Then I go ahead and send that over to Power Automate. So I'm going to click on that. It triggers my Power Automate. This Power Automate, in fact, it said well, I was doing my demo time because it ran successfully. What it does is it's actually going ahead and running a very similar type of flow. See the get items, the one Reza and I just talked about. This is it. I'm going ahead and getting that information of the manufacturer type and the device type, and I'm going and doing an OData call because my list of devices are big. But I can go ahead and using the SharePoint items, I can use the get items, and I can go and, filter it, go ahead and do an apply. And then finally, this is it. I'm going and applying it to save all the information using this markdown style, syntax coding style. It's similar to HTML-ish, but it's got its own little flavor. It's called Markdown Design, and that's it. That's how I go and send all this information back over here, sending it right back to the Power Virtual Agent. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and we'll do another demos. And so I'm going to say device info. So, all right, what type of manufacturer? I'll go and say Acer. I'm going to do that. Let's say laptop. And there you go. This is for some reason it didn't work before, but this is how it comes, nice and clean using the Markdown design style. It also sends me the links to the images. It all just shows up over here. And this is kind of the whole power of the Power Virtual Agents chatbot system using the SharePoint as the backend list. And once you've got your bot created, once you've gone ahead and published it, you can go ahead and get the link for it. Basically after you've got all the details, go ahead and get the link, details, whatever you want, and go ahead and embed that directly into your SharePoint site and make that as your site. One of the highest uses of the bot systems I have seen is this tends to be much more favored than an FAQ. Like SharePoint sites can have a lot of FAQs where you go in and keep scrolling or you search. This is such a nicer way to have an FAQ type of discussion. That's where I've seen a lot of heavy uses of Power Virtual Agents chatbots directly in SharePoint sites where don't have FAQ pages. Put your bot in. Usually FAQs are coming from a SharePoint list. Leverage that SharePoint list for a chatbot, and it does a much better job, a much more nicer interaction over there. Cool. So we've gone through a whirlwind of information about all the things that we can do inside, chatbots, and we talked about the chatbots as well and SharePoint. We do want to end with talking about all of this. Like SharePoint is the fundamental background of, not just the 4 members of the Power Platform, but it's also of Teams because Teams uses SharePoint for all its storage places over there. But there is this one final giveaway that Reza and I want to give you is that SharePoint is not a relational databases. So keeping that in mind, when I just to give you a quick overview, SharePoint is not relationship based because it doesn't build nice relationships, backend relationships like SQL does or Dataverse does. It's a very simple site. Now, granted, you can use lookup columns, but lookup columns doesn't give you that same relationship databases over there. So we just want to leave you with a few thoughts of this volume and capacity is that when you want to make these decisions about, of SharePoint versus databases or even something else, keep in mind that there are a few things from the the capacity of SharePoint can handle a lot of capacity. Now, granted, when you go to a SharePoint list, you go over 2,000 items, you start seeing a little bit of performance problems over there. SharePoint Power Apps doesn't have that much of a performance problems because it's it is literally doing that server side call over there. But keep in mind is that when you start having a lot of these data that's coming in from SharePoint, you could have performance problems on the number of API calls which SharePoint does. Because what SharePoint's API calls, and I'll post a link to the Microsoft document, is that out of the box, its connector will only allow 6,000 calls for every 60 seconds. That is the SharePoint connector's limit. And there's nothing where you can go ahead and pay for more and it'll improve that. No, it allows you 600 calls every 60 seconds. That's the connector call for SharePoint. Well, when it comes to Dataverses, you've got other functionality. First of all, Dataverse gives you 6,000 calls every 300 seconds. That's basically 6,000 calls every 5 minutes. So if you do the math, it gives you 1,200 calls per 60 seconds. Remember, SharePoint only gives you 600 calls per 60 seconds. So I understand that Dataverse is a little bit more expensive if you go on standalone and you're paying for a license for that, but you're getting a value for that money because you're getting twice the amount of APIs to go ahead and pull it. And if you don't want to do that, that's also fine. Do it in Teams. In Teams, you still get to use Dataverse. You are allowed to go ahead and use any standard connector that you want as long as you don't want to pay for anything else. Just keep in mind that 2 gig limit is it. There's nothing you can do to increase that 2 gig limit over there. But again, SharePoint is so much more powerful because you don't have a 2 gig limit there. I mean, mine is a very simple I've got 5 licenses over there. That's it. I've got a very simple thing, and I still get over 1 terabyte of connection capacity. So you got to kind of weigh your pros and cons as to which is the better option. From a performance standpoint, there's a little hit on SharePoint. Granted, again, 600 API calls every 60 seconds. But from a data capacity standpoint, SharePoint is way ahead. You've got a lot of capacity over there. So we, even though this is a very SharePoint centric, Reza and I always believe that we will provide you all the information. We give you our approach to how we make decisions. But at the end of the day, you have the information. You make that decision as to what's the solution you're building. And then decide what's the best option over there. So thank you once again for inviting us to this session over there. This is also the time when Reza and I take a sip of water. And if you've got any questions, go ahead and ask. Just as a reminder, we have our R&D show, so definitely attend that because it's 100% free. And I'm going to pause and take a sip. And Reza, if you have any items in closing as well.
Oh, I think you covered it all. Yeah, we tried to show you the entire spectrum of the Power Platform and SharePoint. I hope it ignited some ideas for your solutions and projects. Let us know in the feedback. I think Ricardo just posted the session feedback link in there. So we would love to know your take on what you felt was good, what was not good, what can we improve on. We're always there to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Reza and Daniel. So guys, you have the unique opportunity here to make questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead. And so Daniel and Reza can try to answer. Do difficult questions, by the way.
Dan and I think, answered all the questions in the chat. At least we tried to respond to most of them. Yeah. I like this one question that was asked right at the beginning of the session. Reza and Dan, how do you get the time to do all of this? And I said it's a secret, so I'll let Dan disclose his secret.
Oh, I stretch time. No, I can't stretch time. I'm very proud of how I manage my time. It is amazing if you manage time, how much you can do, in your 8 hours of day. My average day is about 10 hours though. I will do a full hardcore 8 hours of work because I'm getting paid for that. But then I also put in extra 2 hours of time to do stuff. My family, I have 2 kids. They're at the age where they come back from school and then they're sitting and doing their homework. So I'm sitting besides them and all that. And then, but yeah, you time management is something I'm very proud of. And then my weekends, I'll spend, like I was talking to Ricardo on that. As 6 hours, my weekend goes to building those videos. So I spend some time on the weekend as well. Time management.
By the way, Daniel and Dan and Reza, I have a question, and it's regarding the volume of information on SharePoint, and I completely agree on what you said about the relational database. SharePoint is not, for sure. And for people who has been working since the beginning of SharePoint mostly, what are your strategies when a client or someone asks you to have a list or a lot of lists with a lot of records? What do you try to do? And in the end, you have to choose Power Apps to give an interface for that volume of information. I know what I do, but I would like you to give your opinion.
You want to start with that, Reza?
Yeah, I think I can go for this. So I see a question as well in chat. I actually used translator on the web to translate that. So it says, what do you do in scenarios when your lists go above 5,000
Yeah,
items?
that's it.
So many people have this, I won't say misconception, but this theory is out there that one Power Apps has a limit of 2,000, right? There's that magic number.
Yeah.
And then there's another theory that SharePoint has this magic number of 5,000. And let's face it, these are two very common theories out there. When I started in the Power Platform, my first project that I started was a project which involved SharePoint, a SharePoint list, a list that was bound to grow over time. And I went in there very new into this platform space, and I started creating a Power App. I was super excited. I came from InfoPath, and I knew that this could be the next big thing. So I invested my time in there. I put the app out, and on day one, everybody was happy. I received emails with applauses and all that good stuff. Within a month, the data in that system grew, and it grew beyond 500. So when that happened, and this is a true story, when that happened, no one realized it for a month, another month from that point. After a month, they started seeing the performance of the app, degrading because data was growing. The performance of the app was going down. And then suddenly users started noticing that they don't see results. Like it's not searching the correct results. There's more data in the backend, but Power Apps is not doing it. And then came out the nasty email to me that Power Apps is crap, it doesn't work. And then when I went in there, I quickly realized that there's more to Power Apps than just building an app. I quickly realized that in my first project itself, that I know Microsoft sells this as low code, no code, which is true. It is no code to some extent. It is low code to some extent, but there are some concepts that are extremely important to understand if you want to take this to the next level. One of those concepts is delegation. If you do not play in the hands of delegation, if you do not respect the rules of delegation, you will struggle. And I'll tell you what, I started my YouTube channel with delegation. And the reason why I did it is because there was no reason that I wanted to become a YouTuber or anything. I went out there searching for delegation and I found nothing. I found a couple of videos that vaguely spoke about, 500, 2000, and the answer was increase the limit to 2000. You go to anyone, 90% people will still tell you that. Go and change the 500 to 2000. You cannot, if you do those things, there are implications. And that's where I started with delegation. I deep dived into it. So I just want to let you know that a SharePoint list can handle as much as, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, 30 million items. And Power Apps can work with 30 million items as long as you respect delegation.
Delegation, yeah.
That project that I did back in 2014 or 15 was one of the earliest projects I worked on. To date, touch wood, to date, it's still working, and the backend now has around 300K records. 300K. So it's proof that if you respect the limits of what Power Apps can do, and even SharePoint, the 5,000 view threshold limits, they are increased. There is indexing. There is a lot of things you can do in SharePoint to query lists that are large. So if you adhere and respect what SharePoint does and what Power Apps can do for you, and I think Dan is actually showcasing that right now in the form of a live demo.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing was I showed this demo a lot. In fact, my session on large data sets is for this thing. I do side-by-side comparison. Is that this the state I live in, North Carolina, Department of Transportation, I pulled this data from their website. It's got over 40,000 items on it. And so when I go and do a search with SharePoint, there's two different styles I've done the search. I've gone ahead and actually doing it just a simple query based on these counties and everything. And I intentionally started from the lower number, the 44, thousands. I'm starting at the lower side. But if I were to go ahead and do a search for this Alamance County, all right, which means I'm already gone past, my default is 500. I'm still going past the 2000. But if I do a search for that Alamance County, it's gone ahead and done a query now directly, and it's pulling in all the places that it applied. So we were at 44,000. We were at the bottom of the list. It went up straight to the top. So because I didn't do any delegation. I used the filter function properly to get that information. And then you can use some tricks though. You can actually go ahead and say that, okay, my delegation list is 500. Well, I don't have any more than 100 counties. So select that. You use these trips because you're avoiding the users to make the wrong search or the wrong filter. You control how the search is happening. And after that, I like I said, as long as I stayed in that test, I mean, I've even tested 150,000. Now, SharePoint will give me all these messages. I'm going to list settings and it's going and telling me, oh, you've exceeded your threshold view and everything. And then every day SharePoint site admins will see this as a red flag, but we didn't see any red flag on Power Apps whatsoever. Nothing. There was no exclamation marks. There was no errors, nothing. And did you see how fast the search came up? Like in seconds, I was getting the answers over there. Yeah. So it's doable. You maintain, you respect delegation. When you buy a house, it's all about location, location, location. You build an app, delegation, delegation, delegation. That's it.
It's funny. We obviously delegation was my point here. That's why I asked that. But we usually have another approach that probably can be faster also. That is to use SharePoint search as an engine to do queries. So what we usually try to do is to separate the lists and different information to segregate the information, and then we use SharePoint search with Power Automate to find that information based on current types. That's another strategy, for example. But yeah, thank you for
Again,
that.
there's planning. There's got to be planning involved. I've heard a lot of folks say, I want my user to see the 100K SharePoint results in Power Apps. Yeah, try and fit that in a screen. You can't do that. The user has to scroll, right? And delegation loads data in an optimized manner. It automatically does that for you. The underlying architecture does that for you. It loads 100 records every time you scroll. And that's exactly what SharePoint does as well, by the way. Modern SharePoint does not load your million records in the view. That's why the threshold is exceeded, because as you scroll, it loads. And honestly, if you're asking your user to scroll, or even forget about scroll, even if I load the million records, there would be scroll. So as they start scrolling, do you expect your user to go to the millionth record to find what they want? Or like Dan showed, do you want to give good refiners or filters so that user can quickly get to that limited set of data that they truly need? And I think that is key in handling delegation as well. I see a question in chat, very valid. SharePoint is not a good relational data source. I heard that, but I use lookup columns and it works well. So I'll tell you what, I've worked in a lot of projects wherein I have made SharePoint work as a relational database. I know it's not, but I've made it work. Why? Because customers come to me with premium licensing. I can't afford that. We want to be in the standard realm. We want to be in SharePoint. So does it work? Yes, but there are a lot of workarounds to make it work. It's not that simple as against a Microsoft Dataverse. Now, true relationship means parent-child, hierarchical, security. It's a lot more to it than just two lists being interconnected with each other, which basically what SharePoint is. So lightweight relationships, yeah, you can manage that with SharePoint, but try creating more than 8 lookup columns. SharePoint won't allow you. You cannot do that in a SharePoint list. There are limitations in a SharePoint list and what you can do and what you cannot do. I had a customer who needed 16 relationships with other lists. Guess what I did? I did not use lookup columns. I used my own, I created a standard number column and kind of looked it up to the other list. So sometimes you have to work around things based on scenarios. Now, was that the best design? No. There were better options. There was Dataverse, there was SQL, but they couldn't afford the licensing. So I had to be more creative. Obviously, the development time goes up, the complexity of the app goes up. So there is a trade-off there that you have to play with. And there's a lot of planning involved. And as Dan says, that's one of his #1 videos is list planning. And I don't blame him because many people struggle with that. How do I plan my SharePoint site where, 1 list, 2 lists, 10 lists? How do they all interconnect in Power Apps? How do I search across all those lists? There are challenges that you will have to live with and accept. But if you do, there is a possibility that you can actually get solutions built using related data, even with SharePoint. Who will share the presentation? Well, Dan was sharing it, so Dan will share the presentation to Ricardo, and then Ricardo will share it with the group.
Yep. We will share the presentation on our WhatsApp group. Okay. So when Daniel and Reza share with us, we will share with you.
Can you please share it here on Teams?
Yeah, we'll share the PDF version of that with you all.
By the way, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Reza. I follow you guys on YouTube, so a lot of videos. I remember one app from Daniel with only one screen with multiple videos. I love that video. I don't know if you remember, Daniel. It's awesome.
It was probably a bad idea, but I don't know. It was a great video. It was just a bad idea.
It was great.
No.
Yeah, I tried to replicate it and I just gave it up.
No,
And it works it's way over my head for now. Reza, your videos on delegation. I have a big question on delegation. Do you think it's worth it using collections? I don't have delegation problems. I have small lists, but I want to look ahead and look further in when growing those lists. And I want to know, is it better to get it all in the app itself using collections and then filter the collection, or just forget about the yellow triangles and go ahead and use the filter or the search option directly on the database? I'm speaking on SharePoint databases, of course.
So a collection as well has that yellow symbol next to it. It's just that it never shows it. I'll just tell you this. Collection is also exactly that. It's delegation. Delegation meaning Power Apps is not doing the work. It's making the data source do the work of performing the query on no matter how large the data set is. When you load things in a collection, one collect statement, like collect whatever function you call, that loads data inside Power Apps in memory. So if I say collect Dan's list of 1 million records, it won't collect the 1 million records. It will just collect the first 2,000. Now I've seen people do this. Okay, go and collect the next 2,000. They write a query which says, ID is greater than 2,000 or less than 4, and they keep adding it to a collection. Now, will that work? Because I have the collection, then in the app, I can do whatever I want, search, filter. Yeah. But then what about performance? Test it out. Your app will crash. Try it on a mobile device. Try it on a device that has limited bandwidth. People out in the field are going to struggle with it. And it might work in the browser experience. You might be able to pull it off with good, network connectivity and storage space. But if you ask me, I am not a fan of storing things in collections. Having said that, I do use collections a lot because it's great for creating that local memory for that user's session. Whenever you have scenarios in which your items that you collect in your collection is less than 500, I think that's the sweet spot that Microsoft has defined for delegation as well. So as long as you're there, you're fine. I'll give you a very good example. I have a SharePoint list of all my countries. I'm just giving an example. And that list, I'm going to use it a lot in my app where the user selects the country, right? Now, many a times throughout the app, we keep connecting to that list and say, filter the list, filter the list. We're making round trips to the server. Now that list is never going to change during the user session. Why not just load it into a collection once when the app loads and then use that collection as a reference in all those places? So you improve performance and you know that your list is not large. You know it's never going to grow beyond that. Scenarios like that make a lot more sense to leverage collections. But to avoid delegation, is collections the answer? No. There are many functions. I'll give you an example. With function, WITH. If you use with, it will never give you a delegation warning. So I've actually seen folks write blog posts on it. They use with and no delegation. Yeah, no delegation, but did you test it? Did you test it with a large data set? There is a delegation right there. It's just that it doesn't show it.
That's my problem, because when I'm using collections, or whenever a new record is entered to with the app, I need to redo the collection. So I'm always I basically
That's the other problem. That's the other problem with collections, because you hit it. You hit the nail on the head.
I've avoided the delegation warning. Yes,
Exactly.
I have no triangles there, but still, on every button that I use on the app, basically I do a clear collect. So I'm noticing that the performance of the app will start to struggle when using or either mobile devices or bad internet connection. So do you think it's best for us to keep just ignore the triangle and use filter and use lookup?
Well,
and
you
use
won't
whatever?
get the triangle if you use delegable queries. You won't get it. Filter function depends on what you're trying to do. Depends.
If I use a filter, for example, filter is delegable. Okay, but if I use the difference instead of the equal, it's not delegable.
It's not delegable. Yeah.
I get the warning, and
I've done videos on delegation workarounds. I show some hacky ways of doing things. Not hacky ways, but different ways of doing things. I'll give you one example. The not operator is not delegable, right? So show me everything where the region is not south. So I want all my data where the region is not south. Now that's not delegable, but guess what? I know there are 3 other regions, east, west, and I forgot. Whatever. Blanked out. But what I can do is this. I can say, get me everything where the region is east, or the region is west, or the region is north, right? I know the query looks longer, but that is delegable. So you got to write some smart functions to get around it. Another thing that people outright want is counting. Right? Give me the count of items, give me the sum of items. Power Apps cannot do that. So why not call Flow from Power Apps? Let Flow do that work and send the data back to you once. Why do you want to keep counting in the app? Count is not a delegable function, no matter which data source you use in Power Apps. So there are ways around it, but yeah, I won't say you can ignore the triangle symbols. You can ignore it if you know your data set is 2000 records, ignore it. Otherwise, you should not.
I've added a label with the counts, so I'm aware, and I put in an option, a new button. If the button pops up, the user must click the button, so it sends me an email saying that the counts are high. But I think Dataverse is now delegable in count if you use in.
In is a delegable operator in Dataverse as a experimental feature, but counting is not.
Okay, so you think that I can count using Power Automate? Okay, never thought about it.
Yeah, you can call Flow, and I think I did a video on that also. But I did it for SharePoint, wherein I used the SharePoint's API to count the total and send it back. So you could do that. And now the API limits and Flow have been increased. It's gone into like 400,000 API calls per day. So it's extremely high. So use flows from Power Apps, not a problem.
Really? I thought it was only 2,000 still.
They changed it. They changed the limit.
Nice. So I won't pay another license probably. Okay, thank you. Sorry to take
guys.
Thank you.
So we are finalizing this. We will end with the question from Edgar. Edgar, do your question, and then we'll end the session. Okay.
Right. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Oh, he's going to ask me the question?
Yes, but it's the same one. Item level. This is something that is always very difficult for me, Reza. Thank you.
Item level security.
Yes, item level.
Item level security. Yeah, with SharePoint?
Yeah. Yes, with all my SharePoint lists, I am from HR area. So as you understand, to share information for a list, it's always a challenge to have them looking only to the data that they should look, not to everything, or So item level is always what I achieve or try to achieve.
This was one of the #1 requested videos. So I actually did one very recently on item level security, and I showed how you could do it in different use cases. Now, the thing that probably I did not show in that video is there are limits there as well. You cannot, if you look at SharePoint item level security, you cannot break permissions on a list or library, unique permissions. You should not grow beyond 10,000. Now there's another magic number there, 10,000 or 20,000. Now, if you do that, your performance of your SharePoint list degrades. And if SharePoint list performance degrades, then guess what? Power Apps is also going to degrade along with it. So there are certain caveats with item level security, but if your lists are going to be below that number, you are good. Now, in that video, I actually show folders. Now, I know Microsoft is going away from folders. People hate folders. But trust me, one of the most powerful features of folders is I can create a folder and set security on the folder. I can have 1,000 items in it. All those items, along with that folder, if they all follow the folder security, that's considered as one unique item. That is extremely powerful. Think about this. I can have region-based folders and I can move items in those folders so they're automatically secured just at the folder level. So you can do things like that, but of course, complexity, again, you're raising the level of complexity in your app. In Power Apps, you cannot create items in folders. You cannot do that. Power Apps is designed to create items only at the root level of your list or library. So what do? I did this in a project. I used Flow to move that item to the respective folder based on metadata. So initially everyone sees it, but the moment the flow runs, it picks it up, puts it in the right folder. That item is secured. Only the people who have access to the folder will see it. So you have to play with these things. This is complexity. And this is what you get with SharePoint. If I use Dataverse, well, guess what? Dataverse is very powerful. I can define hierarchical security, role-based security. One thing that I keep getting asked, I have a SharePoint list and this column should be only visible to these people. You can't do that. SharePoint does not have column level security no matter what you do. So you have to know your limitations of your database. And if your database cannot do it, I'm sorry, but Power Apps or Flow or any other service cannot do it for you. So that's my answer. There are ways around it. Check that video. Maybe it will give you a few ideas. Maybe.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much for attending this session. Thank you once again, Reza. Thank you, Daniel. I know Daniel already went off, but
I think he's gone into his next session.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Hopefully we'll have more sessions like this, and hopefully that Reza and Daniel can bring us another session in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll be more than happy to come back again. Awesome audience. I was keeping an eye on the count. I think that's probably the highest I've seen in a user group this year. So kudos to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.